the Sacramento Area Sewer District, which we call SAC Sewer. If you've been aware of this project for a while, it was previously managed by the Sacramento Regional Sanitation District, known as Regional San. In 2024, they merged with SAC Sewer, so now it is officially a SAC Sewer project. And then, as you'll come to see, there are many, many partners involved in this project. So I'm not actually technically a part of SAC Sewer. I work for an organization called the Freshwater Trust. We're a small nonprofit based out of Portland, Oregon, with a very active office here in the Sacramento area. We've got around 40 years experience in mostly river restoration and groundwater replenishment. So we have been brought in mostly to manage the ecological part of the Harvest Water program. So I'll touch on that a bit more as we get into it. So quickly, I'll just go through a general background of what exactly Harvest Water is, why we need the Harvest Water program in this area, the different public benefits that the Harvest Water program brings, and then I'll quickly go through what's happening now with the project. So at its core, Harvest Water is essentially a very large recycled water in lieu recharge program. So what that means is it's a program that recharges groundwater by replacing current need. So basically taking recycled water, bringing it from this Echo Water treatment facility, which treats basically all of the greater Sacramento area's wastewater and turns it into high quality tertiary treated Title 22 recycled water, which is essentially water that I think of it colloquially as just below drinking level. It's approved for use on every crop, so you can use it to irrigate strawberries and send those straight to market. You can basically do everything but drink it. It's very, very high quality water. Taking that water, sending it down into South Sacramento County, where there's about 16,000 acres of agricultural lands that are currently almost completely reliant on groundwater. So that's kind of where that in lieu recharge comes in. We're replacing the groundwater pumping that currently irrigates those lands with recycled water. So the recycled water is technically not the water that is recharging the groundwater. What's recharging the groundwater is the fact that where we currently have a huge demand in pumping groundwater, that's being replaced. So now every winter, when we get all these wonderful rains we get in the winter in Sacramento, and all that water seeps into the groundwater table, instead of in the next summer being pumped straight back up to the surface for agricultural use, it can stay in the ground and year over year fill in fill in the Kona depression we have locally here in the groundwater table. So that's going to produce a number of public benefits, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I'll point out we are largely funded through a California state program called the Water Storage Investment Program, or WSIP, which is a really fun acronym to say. Our current award from that program is just under $365 million, which does sound like a lot. The current estimate for the cost of the program is $585 million. So that's still not quite what we need to build the program, but it gets us a lot of the way there. And then it sounds a little smaller when you think that this Echo Water Resource Recovery Facility, the upgrade on that facility to get that Title 22 high quality treated water was around $1.7 billion. So we do have some great funding, but this is a very large, very expensive project to bring about these public benefits. So puts that in context a little bit. But I also like to point out this funding number, because the way that WSIP works is the funding we receive is based on evaluation of the public benefits that the program provides. So we'll get into those public benefits a little bit later in more detail. You can kind of see how that matches into the funding that we're receiving from the state in our largest funding source. So this is just another kind of zooming in on the agricultural area where we will be delivering recycled water. This red outline you see here is what we call the recycled water delivery area. So that's the area where we'll directly be delivering recycled water for agricultural and habitat uses. And then this white line is what we call the ecological program area, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, but that's essentially the broadest extent of where we think the in lieu recharge from using that recycled water for agriculture will bring ecological benefits. So even though we're just delivering water in this smaller area, we're going to see benefits in a much broader area. So here, let's dive in a little bit more about why exactly this project is important and why we need it. So what you're seeing here on the right is actually those same two areas that I showed you before, overlaid with a slightly grainy early 1900s topographical map. So it's kind of hard to see the detail because printers weren't that great in the early 1900s. But what this map is showing is that there's a lot of emergent wetlands all throughout this area where you have groundwater very, very close to the surface, supporting a lot of different emergent wetlands, riparian forests, some great habitat. Then what you see on the right is the exact same area with modeled groundwater levels for current day. So I say modeled because we have a few different groundwater monitoring wells throughout the area where we can get exact groundwater level measurements. And then we kind of fill in the rest of the area where we don't have groundwater monitoring wells with a model that kind of extrapolates those estimates. So what you're seeing here really is that this red-orange, I'm red-green colorblind, so forgive me if I'm saying the wrong color, this big color, all throughout this area, groundwater levels are well below 20 feet. Yeah, go for it.
Where's the visitor center on your map?
Yeah, so visitor center would be right around here. Yeah. So, am I off? Maybe I'm off. I think it's right around here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's hard without the base map, but it's all covered up with the colors. So significantly you can see all these areas in the middle where there's lots of wetland habitat in the early 1900s. Now we have groundwater levels well below the surface where they're not supporting that kind of habitat. And then significantly, the Cosumnes River runs right along here, and most of the river falls into that red area. So what we're seeing in our model is that in most areas the underlying groundwater level below the Cosumnes is actually well below the river bottom. So in most areas the river as it flows is losing water to the underlying groundwater table. So this is really more than likely this big what we call cone of depression in the groundwater table is from that significant agricultural groundwater pumping that we're trying to replace with recycled water. So that's sort of the core of why we need the Harvest Water program and what it could essentially bring back. So this is what we predict groundwater levels to be with the Harvest Water program. So I mentioned that ecological program area before, this dotted line. So the way that we created this outline is that's where our program model predicts that groundwater levels will increase at least 5 feet because of the Harvest Water program. So all within this massive polygon, we're expecting to see at least 5 feet of groundwater elevation increase, bringing the groundwater at least 5 feet closer to the surface than it is now. This blue polygon you see here, which does kind of intersect with actually where we are right now, and with a lot of the Cosumnes River Preserve here, is what we call our groundwater benefit area. That's where, with the program, the groundwater model says we'll be bringing groundwater levels to within 10 feet of the ground surface or shallower. That's sort of a critical level where a lot of ecologists, a lot of state agencies in California consider that having groundwater within 10 feet of the surface is where you can have significant support for wetland habitats. So this is where we think we'll have the most significant benefit, and as you can see that hits a lot of the Cosumnes River Preserve. Some of you may be familiar with the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge in this area as well. We're overlapping with some of their conservation lands. So the program is modeled to have a significant benefit to, yeah, go ahead.
Over what timeline do you expect to get that in a recharge?
Yeah, so this is modeled at what we call groundwater equilibrium. So we're thinking the program will bring groundwater levels up to this, and then at that point we'll hit an equilibrium where more of the groundwater movement will be lateral rather than vertical, and that is predicted to be between 18 and 20 years after we start delivering recycled water. We'll get into the project construction timeline a little bit here, but currently we're looking to start delivering recycled water January of 2027. So we're hoping 2047, hopefully a little earlier, we'll be at these levels. But it is sort of a log curve. So we get a bunch of benefit to start, and then it takes a while to get that end 20%. So. All right, so how are we getting this water here? Currently, I'm going to apologize if any of you have driven on Franklin Boulevard at any point in the last 2 years. Currently, Saxor is constructing more than 42 miles of underground pipeline to deliver that water. Again, here's this HWPS is the harvest water pump station. Saxor will be constructing a massive pumping facility to pump this water down through a huge system, like I said, more than 42 miles of underground pipe. This main connection to get down to the service area, what we call the Elk Grove transmission pipeline, that's more than 5 miles of 66-inch pipe. So that's pipe that short folks like me can almost stand up in, to put that in perspective. And then as we get into the area and start moving out on different laterals, those pipes do get smaller and smaller, but they're still all at least 12 inches. So it's quite an undertaking, as I'm sure you all know driving the area. Yeah?
Is that pump station currently under construction up at the Bufferlands?
It is not yet. If you've gone through the Bufferlands, you can probably see a big open area with some construction vehicles. They're staging a bit for it, but they have not technically broken ground on it yet.
That's where it's going to be, where that construction.
Yes, yeah. I think as you kind of drive out on the right, there's that big kind of open, dusty field. That'll be the pump station area. So that'll actually be one of the last parts of the system that's put in. But we're starting with the pipeline, and then all throughout this pipeline there will be around 120 specific points of connection where we'll have a valve come up above ground so farmers can actually connect into the system. Those will be constructed next, and then the pump station will be the last portion of it. So, and I will say the construction disruption is somewhat of a decision that's been made. There was a long discussion on whether it would be better to be maximally disruptive for 2 to 3 years or minimally disruptive for 6 to 8. They chose the former, largely because we want to try to get these benefits on the ground as quickly as possible. There is a decently long timeline that groundwater recharge. We want to get a jump on that. So again, apologies, but there is good coming of it. So here we'll jump into some of the public benefits that are going to arise from the program. As I mentioned, the Water Storage Investment Program funding for the program is based on these public benefits and essentially how the California Water Commission's economists have valued these benefits. So starting off, being a little bit of a bird nerd myself and seeing as you all volunteer here, I think there's a safe assumption a lot of you fall into that category as well. We will, in the winter, be creating 3,500 acres of additional sandhill crane habitat. I personally think, too, this is one of the cooler parts of the program, simply because when you think about agricultural recycled water programs, of which this is the largest in California, one of the questions that arises is recycled water is a year-long, steady source of water. Folks don't flush toilets less or take fewer showers in the winter. It's a steady source of water, whereas obviously agriculture has a growing season where you have a lot of demand, and then in the off season there's almost no demand. So if you're going to put in all this investment to deliver all this recycled water to an agricultural area, what do you do in the winter? So in the winter, we'll be using it to both create forage and roosting habitat for sandhill cranes. So for the foraging habitat, we can use that recycled water to essentially flush out agricultural fields that will bring macroinvertebrates to the surface and provide better foraging opportunities for the sandhill cranes. And then for the roosting habitat, you've all probably seen some of the rice fields at the preserve here that does winter roosting habitat management for cranes. We'll be working with farmers to burn fields that they wouldn't be growing a winter crop on in the winter, and creating around 4 to 6 inches of standing water for the cranes to roost in. So I think that's a great use of that excess winter water, and again, love birds, so it's great to see that. And then you remember the maps, seeing we have Stone Lakes up here, Cosumnes River Preserve down here, that can kind of fill in that gap in between for some of those cranes. So it's a great part of the program. We'll also be protecting and preserving about 353 acres of vernal complex habitat. I know there's some vertical complex habitat out here at the preserve. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, but that's essentially ephemeral wetlands where you have a hard clay pan that in the springtime will fill up with water for a few months, and you get some endemic species that just are just found in these sort of ephemeral habitats. So we're essentially, a lot of the farmers that we're working with have current vernal habitats on their lands through the relationships we're building with them by providing them with this new source of water. We're going to work with them to make sure that they manage those lands in a way that's ideal for these vernal habitats, which is sort of a win-win. The best way to manage vernal habitats is to graze it to a decent degree. There were historically native ungulates here that would graze these areas. Now, without those native ungulates and with a lot of invasive grass species that have come in, often you'll get invasive grasses in these vernal pools, and then instead of filling up with water in the spring like they're supposed to, those invasive grasses kind of act like vertical straws. With the evapotranspiration, will pull the water out of the pools, and you don't get that ephemeral pool you need. So by grazing it properly with cattle, that's a bit of a win-win. You get a good habitat management, and the farmers still get to graze their cattle. So that's another big part of the program. I mentioned that a lot of the Cosumnes River currently is what we call losing stretch, where the underlying groundwater level is below the bottom of the riverbank. So as the river flows, it's actually losing water to the underlying groundwater table. By raising that underlying groundwater table, in a lot of areas we'll be reducing that rate of loss. In some areas we'll actually be reversing it, and in some reaches it will become a gaining stream, again according to our program model. That in turn will increase flows, and we're modeled to increase the fall run Chinook salmon window in the Cosumnes River by about 20 days a year as part of the program. So that's another big benefit. Then finally, there's about 5,000 acres of riparian wetland habitats that will be improved as part of the program. The majority of those acres are acres that fall in that blue polygon I mentioned before, where we're bringing water to within that critical 10 feet below ground surface level. And then a number of those acres are acres where we're going to do additional habitat management. So we'll actually be delivering some recycled water to establish riparian forests and wetland plantings, and then be doing other invasive species management on top of it to kind of bring those habitats back more quickly. So that's our suite of ecological benefits. Then our one water quality benefit is the program will reduce salinity loads in the Sacramento River. So the recycled water does have a slightly higher salinity content than the river itself. Currently, Sac Sewer is discharging most of its treated water into the Sacramento River. By diverting that to farm fields with crops that don't mind that salinity load, we're reducing the salinity load in the river and bringing that small load to an area where it won't have any negative impacts. So this is sort of our suite of public benefits, and these all add up according to the California Water Commission economists to that about $365 million value. All right, so that's a lot of why we're doing this program, what it'll bring. So what exactly is happening now? There's a really big public outreach push right now. We started in 2019 going all around that recycled water delivery area, talking to farmers and having them sign what we call LOIs, letters of intent, basically a non-binding agreement saying we're very interested in participating in this program. And that sort of worked as a feasibility study to prove that this program could work once we started moving. Now that we are moving, those non-binding programs are being turned into non-binding agreements are being turned into binding agreements. So we're now going out to farmers with a recycled water service agreement saying, hey, we're going to deliver recycled water. You're going to agree that you'll use it and use it, in the way that we've agreed upon. So we're starting to get those signed. Currently, we've got about 60% of the landowners in the area that you represent the demand, the agricultural demand we want to meet, signed up. We're currently in phase 2 of the outreach, so that remaining 40%. Right now, our outreach coordinator is out there. Actually, as we speak, I know she has a meeting at 11:30 with a big landowner. So knock on wood that goes well, but we're getting out and getting the rest of those landowners signed up. And then we're also working on eco-plan enrollment. So eco-plan is what we use to refer to internally as the ecological part of the program. All those ecological benefits I just mentioned. So a lot of those require some sort of management on the part of either farmers in the area or other groups. So we're working on enrolling farmers who want to kind of take that next step in the program and work on some of those ecological benefits with us. So we're out there also alongside those service agreements. We're getting folks signed up for the eco plan as well. So that's largely folks who might have interest in converting their fields in the winter into some sort of grain habitat. So that's been going quite well. It's really exciting to see how many people are actually interested in participating in the eco plan. Pipeline construction is happening right now. Obviously, you all know. I'll have some more photos here, so you can maybe appreciate the magnitude of it. Hopefully not be angry at the magnitude of it. And then we're also working on some eco plan field trials. So we've worked with some farmers who have interest in managing crane habitat, and we're essentially doing a practice. I was going to say dry one, a practice wet run of that habitat management using groundwater instead of recycled water, so that we can get a better handle on exactly how that management will work. And once we have the recycled water, we can, dive in head first. So here's a little bit of our public outreach. This is a large community meeting that we held at the end of last year. We've had about 4 or 5 of these community meetings, mostly answering folks' questions of what those recycled water service agreements look like, what all the different legal language means, a lot of questions about water quality. So we've been working with the community, answering all those questions. These meetings have gone spectacularly well for the most part, and we've got great buy-in from the community, so it's been really great to see. And then this is our superhero, Anna Swenson. She's our outreach coordinator. She's sitting there with, on the far right is James Silva, a dairy farmer in the area. One of the first folks who signed up to receive recycled water. So I have a folder on my desktop of about 500 of these selfies with different growers in the area. So that's fun to look at when when work gets hard and you get to see all the smiling folks who are part of the program. So and then this is a map of the service area. These are all these different colored fields are the fields where the engineers have designed a point of connection to the recycled water pipeline for folks. So this, in the end, will be roughly all of the fields served with recycled water once the program's complete. All right, now construction. This is what's caused the most traffic congestion, the Elk Grove to Intereston pipeline that I mentioned, that large 66-inch pipe that goes from the treatment facility down to the start of the service area. I think this is a fascinating piece of equipment, one of these tunnel borers. It's crazy to see exactly what that looks like and imagine that thing shooting underground for miles and miles. Here's just to show some of the enormity of the construction. This is a staging area going underneath a creek, so there's a lot of staging on either side of the creek to make sure we can tunnel deep enough on both sides and meet in the middle without impacting the creek itself. So a lot of considerations in constructing that much pipe, and it's been fascinating to see. And then here, just to again sort of show the scale of the construction. That's one of those 66-inch pipes going into the ground. Here's another one showing how deep we have to go to do some of those creek crossings. So this is a person at the top of a ladder. That's a pipe, about the height of me. And that's how deep we're going into the ground, and obviously having to put up scaffolding to keep things clear as folks do construction. So it's quite an undertaking, and yeah, will obviously bring a lot of great benefits. This is just a little bit of an example of some of that eco-plan outreach I mentioned. We've got multiple one-pagers about all the different ecological benefits the program will bring and how different farmers could participate in bringing about those ecological benefits that we've been handing out. Most of them feature some sort of an infographic like this showing how we could have folks still grazing their cows right next to a water feature, fence off the water feature, put in some new plantings to bring back some habitat, and then have some systems to bring water from the water feature out to the cows called off-channel watering, so that we can still have the cows receiving water, still have that grazing land intact, yet still bring back a lot of habitat value. So we're doing a lot of these kind of conversations with folks on their land, going out in fields, walking around, looking at possibilities. So that's been a great process. This is what we're hoping to see once our crane program gets up and running. As I said, we're doing some crane field trials where we're doing the crane management that we're planning to do with groundwater. That's allowing us to do things like measure infiltration rates on the ground. You know, we'll need to know exactly how quickly that water is going to seep into the ground to know how much water we'll need, how often we need to apply to keep that roosting water level of 4 to 6 inches that will require. So we're doing that testing right now with a few different folks. And then we're also testing some weed management tactics. So at Stone Lakes, we're partnered on a field where we're trying to bring back an oak planting that's not doing so well, testing different techniques for bringing back the invasive species that are impacting those oaks. So we had a horde of goats out for a while to test how well they did with dealing with different invasive species. So we're doing a number of different trials, sort of initial testing, planning for when we get that ecological program, kind of running at full tilt. Before I close up and ask for questions, obviously this is a very, very large program. There are a number of partners and supporters that have been involved at every stage of the program. For a little context, we began our application process for that water storage investment program funding, which is really the funding that allowed the program to significantly move forward way back in 2017. So it was an over 6-year application process before we got that money on the ground. We had so many supporters writing letters of support, helping us with all of our program modeling. So it's been, it certainly takes a village to get a program of this scale to this stage, and we can't thank all of our partners enough, including all the folks here at Summits River Preserve. I was actually here on Monday meeting with some of those folks, talking about different things. So CRP has been an incredible partner throughout this process, and we're hoping we can repay the favor by bringing some good ecological benefits in the area. Great, and that's all I had. I can open up to questions, but here's just the general info for how you can get in touch with the Harvest Water Program via SAC Sewer. And then if you want to ask me questions specifically, my email's right here. I'm happy to follow up and answer anybody's questions. But I'll open the floor to questions now. Yeah.
I got a question. How are you selling farmers? Are you appealing to their better nature, or is there a price difference between pumping water